Good morning. My name is Anita Day. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm Trust Chair for East and North Herts NHS Trust. Today is Wednesday, the 6th of November, 2024, and this is the meeting of our Trust Board in public. I'd like to welcome members of our board, visitors for today's meeting, the guests for today's meeting, and also anyone who will be joining us via YouTube, either live or at a later date. We've got a very packed agenda, and I'd like to dive straight in as quickly as we can. But before I do that, just a word of, if you like, warning. As some of you will know, today we do have industrial action going on at our premises, where the clinical support workers are taking industrial action. We absolutely respect their right to do that. But our priority, of course, is to keep our patients safe. And I'd like to publicly record our thanks to other members of staff who have stepped up to try and cover work whilst that industrial action is happening to make sure our patients are kept safe. I'd also like to just mention that some of our executive team may need to step out of the meeting at various times to deal with any ongoing situations. So again, apologies in advance if you notice somebody dropping off. Right, let's move on with our meeting then. And first of all, in terms of declarations of interest, I've not been notified of any specifically for the agenda today, so I'll assume not. Obviously, our regular declarations of interest are on our website. In terms of apologies for absence, we have an apology from Karen McConnell, our Deputy Chair, but I've not been notified of any others. Stuart, I'm sure you'll let me know if there have been any last-minute ones. Moving on then, I'd like us to move to a really important part of our board, which is hearing from sometimes our patients, but on this occasion, members of staff about their experiences and what it's taught us as an organisation to hopefully do better. And for that, I'm going to hand over to Sylvia Gomez, our Freedom to Speak Up champion. Sylvia.
Good morning. I'm Sylvia Gomez, Freedom to Speak Up Guardian for our Trust.
Hello, and I'm Carly Barnes, and I'm one of the professional midwifery advocates here at the Trust.
October was Speak Up Month. This year, we focused on listening up element of our Freedom to Speak Up function. Carly and I want to share with you how we responded to our staff voice, our learnings, and the impact this has had on maternity workforce.
We also wanted to introduce you to the professional midwifery advocate role and the critical role it has in supporting our midwifery staff. We've worked collaboratively with the maternity department, the multidisciplinary team, and used our knowledge and skills within the department to find solutions to support our staff. And I hope it's really added value.
Newly qualified midwives undergo 12-month preceptorship period that involves them rotating through different midwifery areas, including antenatal, postnatal wards, midwifery clinics, delivery suite, and community. The purpose of this rotation is to help midwives consolidate their learning. At a regular midwifery Freedom to Speak Up drop-in session in January 2023, a preceptee midwife spoke up about their experience in their first year as midwife. They explained that they found the year challenging, particularly due to increased acuity, activity, and staffing pressures. As senior colleagues within the department seemed busy, they were reluctant to approach them for support. One shift, they were redeployed from antenatal ward to the consultant-led delivery suite. As it had been several months since their placement, they were anxious and scared. A senior midwife on delivery suite offered to support them and stayed with them whilst the lady they were caring for gave birth. As the unit was busy, After the lady had given birth, the senior midwife left the preceptive midwife to attend to another lady. Unfortunately, the lady who had just given birth became unwell due to hemorrhage. The preceptive midwife summoned help, colleagues responded and helped stabilize the lady. During the stabilization period, colleagues pointed out to the preceptive midwife that they had failed to administer medication to reduce risk of bleeding. The preceptive midwife reported that she was devastated that she had made a mistake. She felt guilty and ashamed. The error stayed with her for a long time. She was too ashamed to make her family aware of the error. She lost confidence and felt there was no one at work that she could speak to. Such was the impact of this event on her well-being. The preceptive midwife decided to resign from her post. Over the next few weeks, I approached several preceptive midwives to discuss their experience during the preceptorship period. Many felt unsupported and reported they did not feel psychologically safe to raise concerns. Concerns raised by these preceptees included incivility and rudeness, poor shift pattern, redeployment when short-staffed to areas within maternity where they had previously not rotated, feeling blamed when involved in clinical errors. They did not have a sense of belonging and felt that the culture was deteriorating. These concerns were discussed with the maternity leadership team and the Speak Up champions within maternity. The turnover for this 2022 batch of preceptive midwives was 44%. 8 out of the 18 midwives we appointed left our organization. Carly Barnes is one of our Speak Up champions and our professional midwifery advocate.
So the role of the PMA came out of the Morecambe Bay investigation by Bill Kirkhock in 2015. This report led to fundamental changes to the way midwives were regulated and provided an ideal opportunity for the midwifery profession to develop a new role of clinical supervision. Professional development and support similar to clinical supervision had been available for midwives since 1902, when through statutory supervision, which we had previously. The new model of midwifery supervision is called A-Equip, and it's an acronym for Advocating and Educating for Quality Improvement. The A-Equip model supports continuous improvement process that aims to build personal and professional resilience with midwives. It enhances quality of care for women and babies and supports their preparedness for appraisals and revalidation. The restorative function as well has been known to really positively impact the immediate well-being of staff. We know from many, many reports that nationally, the preceptor year is often the hardest for all midwives as they transition from becoming a student to a registered midwife. However, when this Speak Up concern was made apparent, we all wanted to endeavour to improve this experience for our junior midwives. There were several meetings that took place with the preceptors, both as a group and one-to-one, as we worked to understand the complexity of the situation and noted similar themes that were raised by the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. These themes were shared with our senior team and within maternity, including the head of midwifery, the directors of midwifery, the matrons, who were understandably really troubled that this was the experience of their staff. We focused an approach to improve the staffing experience, and that was implemented ready for our new intake of preceptees in September 2023. We took a collaborative approach involving all stakeholders, including our Peterborough team, the EDI leads, the Freedom to Speak Up Guardians, senior team, and the training team. And the appetite to learn was strong. Our plan was to learn included that we wanted to launch team values and a charter of behaviour, civility saves lives training with the wider teams. The senior team held regular drop-ins to make it easier for staff to express their concerns and included an element of you said we did within this. there was additional funding providing clinical practice facilitators, and they were given dedicated time to work alongside the preceptees. We appointed and recruited a recruitment and retention lead specifically for maternity. And then PMAs ourselves, we initiated regular group sessions with our individually qualified and newly qualified midwives and making that support available to them. We were also, at their request, provided assertiveness training and as well as mental health first aid training within the multidisciplinary team. This ensured that our issues were addressed early. With all the effort from everyone within our maternity team, this allowed the precepting midwives to thrive and grow within our organisation, and it has resulted in our 2023 cohort of precepting midwives continuing with our organisation with 100% retention and no turnover. So really amazing work that's gone on over this time.
So one of the things that I should have said ahead is the credit for this work goes entirely to the maternity team. They have really were willing to embrace the problem. They were willing to learn. And it was a period when they were very uncomfortable. And the bit I think as an organization we should be proud of is that we have truly listened to our staff voice and we have learned as a department. We are open to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Carly. And that was a really a really strong, a really powerful story about a really bad situation, but all the hard work that went in to turn that around. I'll hand over to Teresa.
Thank you, Chair. A great update there, and thank you for putting the context around it, Callie, around the timescales. I'm aware that there's a lot of work being done around culture, civility and safety, and I think the maternity department is a very different place now, but I'm keen to ask if you had the chance to do something completely different for maternity PMAs, what would you do? What's the one thing that would make a big difference to culture?
I feel giving the PMAs and the PNAs within the trust a real substantive time to take on this role, really embed it and embrace it with just being something that would bring so much to our staff. There's so much within the EA Equip model that if you embed it, the evidence is there that you have good retention and you have really good support around your staffing in groups. And it is all groups with clinical advocacy. This is not just for midwives or for nurses. This is for, I've worked alongside admin teams when they've had incidences, sonographers during COVID. This is a time that anyone within the organisation can be impacted. And so being able to support is so vital. We have research from the 1960s about the impact of vicarious trauma in nurses. And if we don't do stuff to support them, we will lose our staff. And this is a one way of really supporting them to ensure that they are feeling valued and in their organisation.
Thank you. Diana.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you, Sylvia and Carly, for coming in and talking to us. But I wanted to ask you, Carly, a question in terms of, because a lot of these solutions were implemented last year, and you can see the benefits of that now. Do you feel, though, that you've got a system in place, an early warning system, if you see anything happening in terms of if there's a drop or if there's any key themes that you would identify early, just to make sure that we keep the levels that we've got now, which are fantastic, high, and that we don't drop, or that that we don't go below what we expect?
Yeah, so absolutely. Over the last couple of months with Kantar, our recruitment and retention lead, we've been doing stay interviews with our staff. So not waiting till exit interview to hear why people are wanting to leave our organisation, but actually embedding those things early on. So we've just collated all that information for this end of this quarter, and then we're going to present it to our senior teams with all the matrons and the ward managers, because there's lots of quick wins and easy fixes about rotas and support that we can put in, which will really make the staff feel valued. So we are aiming to do those every quarter to hear that voice regularly and ensure that we're doing all we can.
Thank you. Sylvia, I just had a follow-up question for you, because I know, Carly, this is a brilliant model that we've got here in this area. And I know learning is really important for you across the trust. So just wondered what key things that you thought were the learnings that we can maybe perhaps implement elsewhere.
So for me, we have got 6 very active freedom to speak up champions within maternity that play a crucial role in ensuring staff voice gets heard. So that does happen. But I think what we need is more collaborative working, because my role is to ensure staff voice gets heard. Then it's up to the divisions to hold that issue and to do that work on it. Um, I think the appetite for change and improvement plays a really important role in getting any actions implemented. The support that we have had from the senior leadership team also makes a huge, big impact on how we can move towards learning and embedding that learning, because that's really crucial. Once we learn, we need to just embed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Adana. Thank you, Sylvia. Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm Director of Midwifery here at the Trust, and I just wanted to extend my thanks to Carly and Sylvia, because I think it's a fantastic story to present, and I think it just shows the importance of getting it right for our preceptors in that first year at the start of their career. I was sitting here reflecting. I've been a midwife for a very long time, but I can still remember how I felt as a newly qualified midwife, and walking onto the delivery suite that first 6 months, and the nerves and how I felt and how important it was to have that support around me. And I think it's something we carry with us throughout our careers. So and Sylvia, I know you said this is down to the maternity team, but I think your visibility and approachability to the staff has been really key, alongside roles like Carly's and others, to support our preceptorship midwives. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Janet.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, the data is amazing, isn't it? The difference it's made in terms of numbers is very, very powerful. I mean, I think just picking up on that point around the learning, you know, given that there's a sort of new people strategy in incubation at the minute, it would be great to capture some of these ways of working as part of that sort of plan to really kind of embed it in the organization, because I think there's a risk otherwise sometimes, you know, people doing roles like yourself, Sylvia, can get kind of burnt out, or as you say, kind of not collaborating with each other. And it's just so much learning that if it could be truly sort of embedded in the way that people are actually working and thinking about going about their business in the trust, it could be fantastic.
Absolutely agree, Janet. Thank you. Right, I think last question, Richard. Comment.
Thanks, Anita, and thanks, Carly and Sylvia. It's really building on what Diana and Janet have already said. Because to me, freedom to speak up is almost like a safety valve. Yeah, fundamentally, it needs to happen in the organization itself. And so my question is really, what are we doing to arm our middle management with, let's say, the some of the learnings that we've applied here? Because essentially we need to make it work in the organization across all of our different functions. So what are we doing really to kind of enable middle management more on these types of things?
Thank you, Richard. I don't know if anyone feels they're able to comment on that. Amanda.
Yeah, just to say we're spending quite a lot of time investing in our Band 7 ward managers. I think they play a really, really key role in making sure that the staff within their teams feel part of that team, feel included. One of the things that was highlighted in the story was our Band 5 preceptors rotate through many different areas. So it's about how during their fairly short placements in some areas that they feel included and part of the teams. But I think making sure that our Band 7s have the tools, and we've done a lot of work around healthy leadership and lots of different sessions to build that up in our Band 7 managers and make sure that they're equipped to be able to support their teams in the best way.
Thank you, Amanda. Tom, I'm guessing you want to come in on that point too.
Yeah, no, and it's a very pertinent question, recognising that, you know, the sort of that Band 6 and 7 level have the broadest impact on the most amount of staff, actually. And we did recognise that investing in the skills and capability in that group is really fundamental, and those kind of key principles around good listening up skills, as Sylvia's talked about and does so well at communicating throughout the organisation, but also being able to respond and act, and principles around equality, diversity, inclusion as part of a core management skill base as well. So that all features as part of our management competency framework that we've got in the organisation as a very standard programme, which we're seeing increasing numbers start to go through now. And the feedback so far from that work has been really positive and people engaging in it. But I think that alongside the work we do, because Sylvia, I'm sure will say about the work of the champions, that should be embedded through different levels within the organisation. It's not a hierarchical position. Anyone has the role of being able to speak up and champion someone's issue and take that forward, and it's about us having the mechanisms there to respond rapidly when we're able to.
Thanks, Tom. And last comment, Sylvia.
So I want to assure the board that we are ensuring that the learning is organisation-wide. And whenever we have issues, they do get escalated. I have regular catch-ups with the chair, with the CEO, chief nurse, chief people officer, with the medical director. And I think what we are doing is we ensure that we lean into the problem and we actually help. And we have actually transferred some of the transferable skills and knowledge and the framework to other departments. And we have, there are some areas where we are now having regular improvement meetings that are chaired by our execs. And that has actually helped us embed learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. I'm going to bring this item to a close now, but absolutely my thanks to Sylvia and Carly for such a really powerful story. I mean, it's a great story of success, and I know, and the thing about these things is it requires many steps to get there. It requires, as Sylvia says, acknowledging the problems, listening to feedback with humility, being prepared to take action and to work jolly hard to make this stuff happen. And it is a team effort. So really, our thanks and congratulations to you, but also to everyone in the department that has worked together to make this happen. Let's keep up the good work. Let's make sure those early warning systems are working, because we don't want to slide away. But I think this is a really positive story, and our congratulations and thanks to all of you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on. Carly, Sylvia, you're welcome to disconnect when you're ready. Thank you very much. Right, moving on then. The next item on our agenda are the minutes of our last meeting on the 11th of September. They are in your board packs. Can I have confirmation that they are a true record of that meeting, or if anyone's got any amendments or corrections, please speak now. Can I get some nods? Are we happy to approve those minutes? Thank you very much. Let's do that then. Moving on then to the action log. Stuart.
Yeah, so the first action is down as completed. So this was about transition resourcing. And then the second action was around the quality account and producing a summary, and there's a commitment that will be produced in Q4.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the action log? Nope, thank you very much. Moving on then to question. This is normally the slot where we would have questions from the public, but I believe, Stuart, we don't have any this month. Is that right?
That's correct.
Right, thank you very much. So in terms of, we come now to my chair's report, which it tends to be verbal. I don't have very much to say really at this stage, except to first of all, to welcome two new guests to our board, who I hope will be here on a regular basis. I'm delighted that Neil Tester and Ivana Charma from Health Watch Hertfordshire will be joining us on an ongoing basis when they can. initially, I mean, that they are guests here, but it is absolutely our intention that we will be scheduling some slots for them to talk to us about issues that are emerging and so on. Neil, Ivana, I don't know if you just want to say hi. Or...
Hi, Anita. Thank you very much for inviting us, and we're really looking forward to kind of taking the relationship with the Trust onto the next level. We've had lots of contacts with Adam and team, and we had a really good session with Teresa at our board meeting recently as well, but really good to be able to get a sense today about how you're operating in the board, and then looking forward to some of the things that Ivana and the team will hopefully be able to bring to your future discussions, which I don't know if Ivana just wants to add to that.
Morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be invited into this space, and it was really, really powerful to listen to the story in the beginning, because of course that's what we are really passionate about. So I think, in a sense of the hard work you're putting in behind the scenes and the way we think about our values, we're going to have a lot of really good conversation going forward. But for today, we're here to listen and learn, and thank you for the invitation.
Not at all. As I say, we're delighted you could join us, and it's part of our ongoing push to really, make sure that we're learning from you, learning from what our patients and communities are telling us about our services. So we really value the relationship with you, and are looking forward to deepening and strengthening that as we go forward. So welcome indeed.
Many thanks.
So I think apart from that, I think I'll just hand straight on to our Chief Executive. Adam, your report, please.
Thanks very much, Anita. And as usual, I'm just going to draw some things out from my paper that's structured around our 4 strategic themes to bring the board up to speed. So we are approaching winter, if for some we're not already there. And as usual, lots of planning goes in place both at a national level and locally. And we've received a letter from NHS England, which was attached to the paper, and at the end I'll just ask Lucy to add anything she wishes to this item, which really sets out what the national teams are planning to do for additional resilience, as well as expectations of both integrated care boards and trusts. None of these go beyond our normal plans in terms of escalation that we do when we flex around. And if there was anything significant we had to deviate from that, we would bring that back to the board for a broader conversation. But it's very much our normal planning and our escalation that we would do in any times when activity increases. I've mentioned, I think in the last couple of reports, various initiatives around making the organisation more dementia friendly. And I've just mentioned here that through the work of the team, we've been really bringing some focus to this, working with catering to really improve the quality of the cutlery and crockery that we're using to make it easier for those people with dementia to maintain a greater level of independence in terms of the way they feed and drink, which I think is just a really important part of trying to improve our services around the specific needs of our patients. We've done some refurbishment work in the neonatal unit to allow our patients to stay closer to the babies. And again, that's a real focus on the patient and carer experience, and not just the central clinical care that we deliver in the organisation. Now a really important item, I think, because it's been on the board agenda for quite some time. The board will be very aware that back in 2022, we had a Care Quality Commission inspection as part of a national review of maternity services. And unfortunately, we were rated at that time as inadequate. As we know, and the board have had lots of oversight of this, real hard work went in to improve that position and address the concerns that have been raised. And when we were re-inspected a few months later, that improvement was recognised, and we moved out of inadequate to requires improvement, which is our current CQC rating. But as part of that work, we were enrolled onto the Maternity Safety Support Programme, which is a national programme overseen by NHS England, in partnership with Maternity Voices, and setting out our plans to continue to improve further. And we've had regular contact with those teams. And we had a visit 2 weeks ago after they had signalled to us they believed that we were in a point that we should be exiting from that programme. And really positive news that they were very positive in their feedback to us and the improvements they'd seen, and have now put us forward for removal from the maternity safety support programme. And going forward, I think when other trusts are in that position, looking to share some of our learning and improvements. So I just want to put on record the huge effort, not just by the direct maternity services, but those people supporting estates and others digital, that have seen real improvements for those using that service. Under Thriving People, I just wanted to make the point, because some people wouldn't be aware, that every couple of weeks we have new induction sessions where we bring new staff into the organisation, bring them up to speed with some technical things that they need to know in order to work here safely, but also really try and instill in those individuals what we expect of those joining our organisation, including things like we expect them to speak up, and we've already heard from Sylvia, when they see concerns, when they get ideas coming from their previous organisations, but also making sure they're really clear on the values that we hold dear here and trying to model through our behaviour. So it's a great opportunity for me personally to engage with people and really try and set the welcome on behalf of the board to those new people joining. And we had some really positive news back at the beginning of October, where our people team won the national award at the HMPA conference for innovation. And this is for the chatbot that we have implemented on our intranet, meaning that staff who traditionally may have tried to ring different people in the people team to understand, to get some advice on whether it's leave policy or uniform or other issues that relating to working here. And that chatbot has been developed, and now by people just typing in, it guides them to the right policy or the right department they need to go to. What's been fascinating is that we've received lots of interest from other organisations, and some people are now purchasing from us some of the work that we did in the build up of that. So congratulations to the team that have really been working on this. Well, certainly one of my very first meetings here was with one of the members of the people team, Asif, who was passionate about this digital enabling of how we deliver the service. Board members will be aware, really over the last 2 years, we've been reshaping the management structures in the trust, and we've been building new divisions and care groups within there. And we've now appointed a number of new people into those roles. So we really believe that new structure is now fully implemented. But alongside this, we've started a development programme, because we recognise that when you move, particularly our clinical staff in who may not have had lots of management leadership responsibility, it's important that we equip them with the tools to do that job. So we've just started a new development programme for our care group and divisional leads to make sure that they are able to function with all the potential they've been appointed to, with the right skills to do that. And again, really importantly for the organisation, we want the external view of the trust to be a place where we're at the cutting edge of things, pushing boundaries. And it was great to see a member of our critical care outreach team recently published in the Nursing Times, which is a really big publication within the nursing community, with a real focus on the work that we've been doing on sepsis. Now, in terms of seamless services, we increasingly work in a system, as we know, and there's been one day and another one to follow next week, where the chief execs across the system have been getting together to really set the strategy to take our system and the care we provide across Herts and West Essex forward. Some difficult conversations, recognising we've got a challenging financial landscape, but also lots of different perspectives in terms of what the future should look like. So I will continue to feed back to the board as those kind of things develop. And similarly, when we're inspected, increasingly we're inspected as a system and not so much as an organisation. There is a process of joint targeted area inspections around the care for children who are the most vulnerable in our society, really. It's predominantly looking at the local authority, but we clearly play an important role in that, particularly around safeguarding. We're blessed in this organisation to have an absolutely outstanding safeguarding team, and have absolutely confidence in going into that review. And we've got some very positive feedback in terms of what was found, but we will wait, as always with these things, for the formal feedback to come through. Just to mention one or two things about the ENH production system that increasingly is forming part of our language here. Positive leader rounds are increasingly being embedded now, and this is where senior leaders across the trust, and increasingly it will be for our middle leaders, are regularly going out to frontline areas to talk to staff, not with the purpose of assurance or checking up, but having conversations about how do we support improvement in the areas. There's been some fantastic examples we've heard where individuals, particularly those that have gone through our introduction to ENHPS training, are now just making changes in their own workplace, things that maybe they've been aware of but didn't really feel equipped or having the opportunity to improve. So we're seeing those kind of daily changes, which is really fantastic. And we've also had our second Rapid Process Improvement Workshop, which is a week-long event. The first one was in our resourcing team, and the last one that took place a couple of weeks ago in ophthalmology, with a real focus on those having injections into their eyes, and just seeing how we can make that experience better than we can. During that week, 62 change ideas came up. A number were implemented immediately, and some unexpected benefits. So, for example, it's been identified we can save £17,000 just by not following a process for everyone who doesn't need it, and just by not putting in drops for some patients where it's not necessary. An unintended consequence. It wasn't part of the objectives. It's very much about making the experience better for our patients and our staff. So that's been really positive. And over the next 2 weeks, tomorrow I'm speaking at one national event to talk about the progress we've been making. And then next week at the NHS Providers Conference, I'm speaking as part of a session sharing our story, because there's an awful lot of interest externally in what's going on at East and North Herts, which is great. And I guess the other really big change we're going through, and the board decided on, is our One EPR programme. This is to bring together our clinical information systems into one joined up system, which will make life a lot easier for our caregiving staff, a lot more efficient, so they can put more time into interaction with patients rather than having to do the admin. And it will really unlock an awful lot of digital opportunity for us. We had the formal launch the week before last, and we had the team come over from Dedalus, who are the company we're working with, who already provide some of the services we have. It was a really great launch, watching staff having an opportunity to see the system in demo form, asking the questions. And the beauty of this system we're going for is we've got a real opportunity to work with the company to shape how it works for us here at East and North Herts, and how it can be a real advantage to other NHS users. The big change will be we will really be moving over from paper records to electronic ones over the next 2 years, and I think that's an exciting change for everybody involved. The last thing I wanted to mention on my paper was about the fact that the government, following the Darcy review into really doing a stock take of the NHS in the UK, has launched a programme called Change NHS, and I've attached the paperwork and the letter to this report, really setting out the process of hearing from staff and the public about what the next 10-year strategy for the NHS should be. Lots of work already going on, and it's really here for information. There will be a request for us later down the line to organise something on a local level to hear from staff, but there's an opportunity for the public already to go via the details in the letter to have their voice heard. And the last thing I really wanted to mention that wasn't on the paper, because it's very topical, is that earlier on this week, due to a power outage across Stevenage and some of the surrounding towns, we had a really challenging night. We had 2 power outages, one after the other, and the problem in running an organisation like this in this century is the fact that so much of what we do is digital. So even any outage, whilst we have backups with battery powered support for our most critical equipment, for generators, in order to support other things, the digital becomes a real challenge, because clearly a sudden change in power can blow things and switches go. But we maintained a safe site over the the night. The trouble is we get everything going back and there's another power outage and we have to do it all again. So I just want to offer my thanks publicly to all the staff who are in clinically, but also members of the digital team and the estates team, management who through the nights were making sure that we had things under control. We got support from the ambulance service so that should we need to, we were able to divert some of our patients to the other neighbouring trusts who were fully supportive in a way that we will regularly do when we get those variations of kind of how busy each of the local hospitals are. But people went above and beyond to ensure that we, our patients saw very little impact in terms of that. We had to change some things in the morning because we needed to get new systems calibrated, but very little impact on our patients who were here to serve, but because staff put themselves out. So I think at that point, Chair, I will stop. I'm very happy to take any questions before maybe Lucy then adds anything under the winter pressure position.
Yeah, thank you, Adam, and absolutely. You know, I'd like to add our thanks to the teams that were involved in that last incident. I think, as you said, patients were kept safe. We were back on track as quickly as we could be, but that must have been a very, very difficult night for everyone involved, and I know people worked incredibly hard to make sure that happened. So yeah, absolutely, our thanks and great congratulations to everyone involved. David.
Thank you, Adam. A couple of quick reflections. First, I did think the EPR launch went well, so thank you very much for including us non-executives. I stayed much longer than I was expecting. The second is just to reflect on dementia work you mentioned. So it's good to hear what the Trust is doing. I do think that's a significant improvement for people who suffer from dementia. But to remind my colleagues that we do have an annual dementia report at the Quality and Safety Committee, and I have seen an improvement in our work over the years. However, I think we cannot afford to be complacent. You know, this is a massive problem for health and social care in the next 20 years. And it is a very slow moving, but absolutely momentous tsunami of problems coming down the road for people and for organizations. So at the very same time that there's a lot of promising treatment out there, much of which is not being accepted by the NHS at the moment, but that's inevitably a matter of time. So there will be a lot of changes in the way we must approach this. So it's just a red flag for the future, I guess.
Yes, absolutely, David. Richard.
Thanks, Anita, and thanks, Adam, also. Related to the power outage, Adam, are we doing kind of a lessons learned? It's not so often that we activate the full BCP. And the second question is, how often do we really exercise our business continuity planning?
Yeah, so yes, as with any incident, and actually even not kind of major incidents, we will also always have a lessons learned, because after the initial incident, there's also the recovery time and learning from that. We test many of our systems in terms of generators and other BCPs routinely. We're often actually moving to BCP in targeted areas. For example, if we get one of the digital things go down, we might move to BCP in ED for a period of an hour while that's being sorted. So there are quite a lot of actually real life moving into it. But perhaps I think Lucy's hands probably come up to also give a bit of reflection as she was kind of running the incident for a large part of it. So Lucy, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks very much. We have a strong emergency planning and response team, and they organise us to do regular tests and make sure that we have a full set of business continuity plans, not just that are on paper, but that are enacted. And real life situations have also given us a lot of practice, real life practice in responding to these incidents. This one was declared as a critical incident because it involved diversion of patients for a period of time, full divert of any patients by ambulance to other organisations, and required a level of mutual aid that was beyond what we would normally ask for. And we're in current planning for a full electrical shutdown test known as the Black Building test, hopefully later this month, certainly by the end of this financial year, with lots of active planning and preparation going on for that.
Great, thank you very much, Lucy. I think I was going to turn to you anyway at this point. I wonder if you could talk to us about winter and H2 priorities. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We've taken a summary of our winter plan to the FPPC. We have a kind of full winter plan, which is an active plan, and not just a plan that sits on a shelf, which all divisions have, and various specialist services like the infection control team have contributed to. You'll see that in the winter letter and guidance, there are 10 important priorities, of which 3 relate to acute hospitals and the remainder relate to services outside of hospitals. So the kind of full winter plan for our system is held at a system level, and there are a number of priorities that or actions that were put in place during our multi-agency discharge event week in September that between ourselves and system partners we are putting in place over the winter. For example, having navigators from the community trust in our emergency department to support to turn around patients at the earliest opportunity. So the other thing that's important in the papers that we've got in the pack is the management of temporary escalation spaces, and operations and nursing work hand in hand to make sure we do have a number of what we call +1 spaces on our wards. They are clearly demarked, and we only use them when necessary and for the shortest time period necessary. They have had risk assessments. We have proper communication with patients and families about what's happening when we do either reverse board or move into +1 spaces. And so that's what we do when we have to surge in terms of responding to winter pressures. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Any questions for Lucy on that? Excuse me. No, it looks like not. So thank you very much then. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our estates and facilities strategy. Kevin.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do hope you've all had a good chance to read through this document. It has been through a number of various iterations over the last little while. My apologies, it was delayed coming to board for very good reasons. What you're seeing here is a document which has changed in its format but not in its objectives, and the reason for that is we're trying to get a document which is meaningful to all sorts of people, and an estate strategy can run on a little bit. It's unusual for estates directors to run on, as you all well know, but it has got the tendency to do so. And I think we've condensed this down now into a number of items where people can actually look at appendices as well, where their interests lay in separate entities. However, you've got to remember the estate strategy is to ensure that our environment overall is safe to allow our clinical teams and nursing teams to carry out their exceptional treatment to our patients. That's the first objective. We've ensured that the emerging estate strategy has been led by our divisions, with emerging strategies in the health economy and due regard given to available resources, be it physical, be it personal, be it financial. We have a duty overall to ensure we protect the public purse as well by utilising our resources correctly and efficiently, and hopefully that shows through here as well. The estate strategy document, all NHS estate strategy documents and all organisational estate strategy documents is a developing document. It will change, and it should be able to adapt to local and national changes. It needs to be able to react to a 365-day 24-hour environment, which is unusual, apart from in the NHS, but it allows the trust to build for the future with confidence in the direction we're taking. That direction could change from a day-to-day perspective, but it gives us some confidence in the way in which we're working towards it, and it's an understanding of our initial aims. We also have within the estate strategy, and it's not just about the way in which forward, we have a legal obligation to comply with our statutory compliance. And the estate strategy is a vessel which outlines that direction and ability to provide assurance to the board and to the staff and the patients who use our resources. The document shows our direction and our partnership and our objectives and how they could manifest themselves physically at a later stage. We've shown what we have done in this document and intend to do in a short, medium and some long-term measures. We've identified our strengths and opportunities, but probably more importantly, we've also already identified our weaknesses and any threats that we might have coming down the line. That's not only physically, but also politically, with the changing face of the health economy and a new government coming in and how that's going to look, as well as local pressures from our ICBs and documents that they're initially putting out. Within the estate strategy, you also see that our green credentials are part of the most forward planning that we have, and our plans on how to achieve net zero. And I've got the green plan document after this, which is for noting, but I'll give a quick overview. We've identified our support services and their development, such as EBME and SSD. And as I said earlier, the appendices are made to simplify the estate strategy. So there's a document at the front which clearly identifies what the physical changes and the operational changes are needed to assist our divisions to do what they want to do. But it's trying to make it an easier document to follow and can be supported in simplistic terms and means something not only to this board, but also our staff and our patients coming in and interested parties outside. As I said in my forward, and a lot of other things that are said by Adam, we picked up a statement that's been used elsewhere, but we've tweaked it a little bit. It's tomorrow's treatments and should be made available for today's patients. That's a sort of an aim. But later on, you'll see in the appendices and in the front of the book, we've tried to identify a vision within the estates department, which is a healthier hospital for a healthier community. I don't think it's ever been more prominent, the fact that the environment of the hospital and its effect upon the care of patients. We briefly touched on dementia, but that's one of hundreds of issues that we need to pick up. It is a challenge. I think that everyone's looking with interest in what the investment is going to be from the government going forward and our backlog maintenance and bringing things up to date, where we're going to stand ourselves, surrounded by trusts who are looking to enhance their position by new hospitals, and where that leaves us in supporting, in being partnership with that. Even if we don't get a new hospital, we're going to be an intrinsic part of that and how we move forward. So I'm happy to present this to the board. I'm happy to take any questions on it. I'm hoping that it covers as many items as possible in an interesting way and something that people can actually read in a simplistic manner and identify what we're trying to do going forward.
Thank you, Kevin. And I have to say, I thought actually it was very readable and set out a lot of the summarised a lot of the things that we're juggling with. Any questions or comments for Richard? This item is for approval, so please do let's ask whatever questions we need. Richard.
Thanks, Anita, and thanks, Kevin. And I do agree, it's a very useful document and it's a very readable document. It calls for a few concerns. I think one of my bigger concerns is around the, let's call it the backlog maintenance or the maintenance requirements that we see in the coming years. Maybe this is a question for both you and for Martin, but how do we ensure we've got the capital for the things that we definitely need to do, which is very, very considerable, And I think we can all see that when we visit some of our facilities. So that's an important one. And the second one is, and maybe that's part of the solution to this, is there more that we can do commercially with some of the land and facilities that we own? And then finally, what I find missing in the report is a couple of the metrics that would kind of enable us to understand, well, how well are we doing? How well are we doing compared to other trusts? And how are we going to make improvements in the costs per square meters, or the cost of the facility management elements, et cetera, et cetera. So really 3 points.
Okay. I'm sure Martin will come in. Every year I've been here, and every year I've been at every other hospital, the capital allowances that are set aside for investment in the hospitals have always been split equally about among a number of things, and backlog maintenance is up there, and we make our bids like anyone else. The numbers that you see in some of our returns, like the ERIC returns and the PAM documentation, will clearly identify this somewhere between 65 and 75 million pounds worth of backlog maintenance here. We have to, like everyone else, I mean, it'd be very nice. I'm more than happy if the board wants to give me 65, 75 million pounds right now, but we, like everyone else, have to risk evaluate that on what the impact is on the operational functionality of the trust is, and we do that. And every year there is a progressive document that sits, and it sits with all the other bids against capital. But it's the top percentage of things that might have an effect on it. Martin, did you want to come in on the capital side of it? I was going to do the consolidation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Richard's point is very kind of pertinent. We know that the NHS backlog maintenance bill is at record levels now, £13.8 billion that's set out in the budget, and it's clearly good news that the government is putting in an additional £3.1 million worth of capital that might start to address elements of that. But I think in terms of how do we prioritise how we spend on backlog maintenance, I think that starts with a very kind of clear understanding and diagnostic and assessment of our estate and the risk that it's exposed to, and the prioritization that we need to make. And that will, we have roughly about £15 million worth of discretionary capital at our kind of disposal. And that requires us to make, I think, at times difficult judgments about the balance of that between other priorities around medical equipment or kind of digital or other kind of strategic investments that we want to make. I feel confident that we have the right governance groups within the organisation that have good representation from our clinicians and our operational managers on there in terms of having those difficult kind of sort of discussions. I think, without any immediate kind of additional investment on there, I think inevitably we will find ourselves over time making more and more investment into backlog maintenance and probably less into some of the strategic investments that we might want to make. So it's a difficult environment, kind of, Richard, and I think a lot of difficult choices kind of within there. But I do think we've got good data, good people, and good forums to help to make that, and then communicate that back to our committees and the board.
If I may come back on the other two items, Anita, I think you talked about the utilisation of our resources and our estate, Richard. We're always looking at the consolidation of that. We are where we are, of course, with the physical entity of the hospital here at the Lister, but where we can consolidate, where we can bring in, where we're not utilising money outside, will eminently be driven by a space utilisation review, which is underway at this moment. But we're some way down the line on that, figuring out where people should be, and that will be affected by other policies which are emerging, such as agile working, etc., and whether or not we actually need that amount of physical space, and ensuring that we consolidate any physical space that is available into clinical requirements first, and then work our way across. So we are also looking just on the other side on consolidation, ensuring that our partners out there who own or run properties for us are held to account in totality, both financially and physically, and on statutory compliance. And I think the last thing you were saying, how does it actually fare against others? Every year we do an ERIC return, the PAM return, and we're very honest about that. And in the past, a number of hospitals may have used the ERIC and the PAM as a very blunt object to achieve their requirements with regards to investment portfolio for capital, etc. We've gone through our ERIC and our PAM returns in great detail, so as we know exactly where we are. We're reintroducing our space utilisation, and we're doing an update on our 6 facet survey as well to find out where the additional costs are. So do we know exactly where we are? I think we're probably better placed than a number of other trusts. That's not putting us in a group just to hide ourselves. I think we're probably better off. I'm fairly confident on the information we've got, and that will then start showing itself in the ERIC returns, the model hospital information that comes through from the ERIC returns and the PAM. Does that answer your question, Richard?
It partially does. I just think that when we do a strategy like this, it's good to have a number of these numbers in there, and also, let's say, a forward projection of where we'd like to go in the next couple of years.
Point taken. We could.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And yeah, understand, agree. Nina.
Thanks, Chair. I just, from a practical perspective, I noticed that car parking is under the remit of the estates team, and I know that it's something that comes up constantly when we have some of the staff stories, and I was just wondering, Kevin, if there's going to be any updates about that. I thought the document overall was really good, really easily digestible, but I just thought that because it's one of the things that does come up quite often.
It's a hugely emotive. It is a hugely emotive subject. There's a lot of work we have done about this, Nina, going past. We've done evaluations of the utilisation of car parking. We have investigated the need for car parking and how we get that, bearing in mind that the investment portfolio from that is clouded by a number of ways in which we could glean that money back. It's an investment portfolio that under finances would be on our books, and therefore it's quite a difficult thing to do. But overarchingly, the reports we've received, because we haven't got a waiting list on this trust, there is not a business case which holds up highly with regards to the investment of putting in a new car park, because the restriction of space would mean we need to build up, means that there's quite a large capital investment. And the work we've done doesn't tie up that there is a huge investment portfolio for a multi-storey car park on top of the one we've already got. We have enhanced the car parking. We are managing the car parking better. We have an off-site facility, and we've enhanced the utilisation for that. We've been in conversations with the junior doctors, who are very vocal on this as well, and quite rightly so. And we've tried to assist them with regards to additional resources. We're looking at ways in which we can work with the local council, and putting pods such as cycle pods here to go to and from the station, and we've got intersite buses. So there are a number of issues. It's just not always just one thing on the car parking.
I wonder, Anita, if you don't mind me cutting in there. I think we did have a good conversation about the difficult subject of kind of car parking back in the summer, and we did agree, as Kevin's set out there, a number of different actions by which we would try and improve the position. It might be kind of helpful for the board or one of its subcommittees to just take a little bit of a review of that activity on there to feel satisfied that we are making progress on those commitments that we've previously given.
Yeah, you literally took the words out of my mouth there, Martin. I think we do have that, and it would be good for us to be monitoring progress against those commitments. So yes, could I ask, please, if that could go to FPPC? I think that would be on a regular basis and an ongoing basis periodically, so that we can just track that, because Nina's absolutely right. Everywhere you go, that's what you hear. So
be happy to do that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, we're running a bit short of time, so we'll get through these a little bit briskly, if that's all right. Tom.
Yeah, I'll be super quick. Yeah, just firstly, recognition for Kevin and the team, that I do think everyone's been kind of well engaged in this, and I'm very obviously pleased to see a positive environment listed in there and some clear statements around recognising how the environment impacts on people's well-being and therefore staff retention. I guess my question is, though, and it links a bit to the last point around when we get into implementation and sort of monitoring and compliance, I just wonder from Kevin how he proposes that things like that don't get lost among, we are in a constrained environment and there's a lot of focus on backlog maintenance, things like that, but those other things around the positive environment still kind of come through when we get into the kind of implementation phases going forward.
Yeah, I mean, most of that would be through involvement and consultation with teams. So we would involve them in every development that we're picking up. I'm happy to take it outside of here and review, ensure that we've got enough representation, not only from staff side, but also from the staff themselves and from patient interest groups. And we try and get them involved in everything as much as we possibly can and as much as is reasonable, but maintaining a progress on that. So happy to take advice and suggestions on that.
Great. Thank you, Tom and Kevin. Right, Teresa.
I'll be really quick as well, Chair. So thank you, Kevin. It's really good to see this. I guess a couple of areas that I'm really keen to understand is how we will provide greater side rooms going forward for our patients, greater washing facilities, and indeed create a culture around not just dementia-friendly environments, but patient-friendly environments, whether that's outpatients, tower wards, or anywhere you like. I know it's all in there, but I do think just by leaning into some of the patient feedback, some of which we get in complaints, but some of which we get in compliments as well, would make a huge difference. And I'd love to help with any aspects of that you think would be useful.
Thank you, Teresa.
All of that gratefully received.
Great. Thanks, Teresa. Finally, Justin.
Thank you so much, Anita. I think it's a really good paper, Kevin, and I think a lot of work has gone into it, so thank you. I guess the thing that I worry about in terms of, in addition to the backlog maintenance, is the cost of putting Mount Vernon where we want it to be in order to provide optimal care for our patients with cancer. I think when we're thinking about the 65 or 70 million pounds of backlog costs, we have to add in the 300 to 400 million pounds that it's going to take to redevelop Mount Vernon and put it in a place where we can really offer the best care to our patients. So I know that the sums we're talking about are just getting bigger and bigger, but I think we have to have all of that in mind when we're thinking about it. And I guess that just makes our 15 million pounds even more difficult to deal with when we've got all of those challenges.
I accept that. You bear in mind, of course, Justin, that Mount Vernon's not our site, and as such, the investment portfolio will come through the Hillingdon unit. However, we've clearly identified as a trust the substantive risks that we have on the areas in the site that we actually manage. So we've had substantive investment for 2 to 3 year plans whilst decisions are made on the future of cancer services. To maintain it to a reasonable standard. That's not even category B, but we have done that, and over the last year and a half, 2 years, it's probably about 7.5, 8 million, and rising millions of pounds worth of infrastructure costs that's gone into the areas that are occupied by East and North Herts on the Mount Vernon site. There will be more documentation coming forward, and we are continually saying, Martin and I sitting on these meetings, that we're spending money at the moment to maintain a level which is not the level I professionally would like to be at, but a level where I can actually say I have reasonable or limited assurance to give the board that our patients are safe, and that's where it is. We're now going on to the next phase where I'm saying if there is a hiatus in the decisions on Mount Vernon, then there's a cost implication that we need to identify for safety again of our staff and our patients, and we will do that in a very short period of time.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kevin. I think a lot of a good conversation there, and it was, as I say, I thought actually it was a very well structured paper. So thank you for that. I think my last concern is clearly there is an awful lot of capital work that is needed, and we don't have the money to do it all. And I think the key thing that we as a board need to get assurance on is that we are really risk assessing that backlog maintenance, and that it is robust, that we are clear, that we are understanding the risks as they materialize, because as everyone has said, the problem with this stuff is the risk might be X today, but actually in 3 or 6 months or 12 months, that risk will have probably got worse, and it will cost even more for us to repair it. So this is something that we need to be on it all the time, and really be making sure that our risk assessments are as up to date and as robust as they can be. So that would be my plea from the board, is let's get some assurance that that process is as robust as it needs to be, because we all want to keep our staff and patients safe and in the best, the optimal work environment and treatment environment. But it's not rocket science to say we don't have the money to do everything that we need to do. So we need to start making choices, and I know we're doing that. But yeah, please make sure that process is robust and regularly updated. Right.
Will do. I was going to say, my assumption is we will report through the Quality and Safety in the First Instance Committee, through the Health, Safety, Fire and Security Group, and we're trying to consolidate all the items you said into one document, in an easy readable document. Thank you, Anita.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, can this paper was for approval? Can I have some nods? Are we happy to approve this strategy? Thank you very much. It is approved. Now, in the interest of time, Kevin, we have got the green strategy as well. It's for noting. I wonder if you could give us the 30-second version of it, please. Well, okay, I'll give you a minute, but probably no more than
That's
that.
fine. On that lead-in, the Green Plan in front of you is the most significant non-clinical policy agenda in the NHS at this moment. There's a lot of opportunities for us nationally in this. There are an awful lot of challenges, and there's a substantive drive for us to, well, not substantive, there is an insistence and drive that comes through. I think we as a trust are very blessed in the fact that people realise this is not just about the boiler house, and the involvement and support that we've got from across the board is immense, and it's led very ably by our non-exec Karen, who is a stalwart of the Green Plan. In January 2022, we put forward our green policy, and that was now maintained over the progress has been good, despite numerous issues on the outside that tried to take away from it, and distraction and pressures. We have 30 members of the Green Ambassadors Group, which is terrific and much higher than a number of other trusts. And now the Green Plan is actually part of the trust's overall induction, which is a great step forward. Over the last little while, this trust has been successful in picking up £1.3 million in the investment in LED replacement. That's reduced our tonnage by about 760 tonnes of CO2, which is about, and there's a 64% reduction in our light bills, which will work out about £1 million a year as it comes to full fruition. We've also got £750,000 for solar panels, which are now finalising themselves all over the site, which should bring us in about 180 tonnes of CO2 reduction as well. All these numbers are immense. We have a complex 16-year multi-work stream proposal, which is underpinned by a 3-year strategy, which is the Green Plan, and that's quite a difficult balancing. It's challenging, but the team are enthusiastic and extremely passionate about what they do. This document is the outpouring from that group, and whilst I have immense support, I'm putting it forward here for noting and approval that noting on the progress and massive progress that has been done, and the fact that it still sits quite high as a light shining out as part of our policies in the trust, which we're very pleased about. I think that's probably my minute, Anita.
Thank you very much. And I do think there's lots here to really applaud, and a lot of ambition. And I think it's really there's lots of positives here, recognising the scale of the challenge. Any questions or comments for Kevin on the green strategy, please? Nope. Okay, thank you, Kevin. I think the paper was I say, well structured. We could see what we're doing. What is the process? Will it be coming back? Will you be coming back with an update at some point? What's the plan for how we're going to track progress?
It will come back. There's a regular review of the strategy which will go through. I think it hits both the finance committee will identify on there and on our savings plans as everything else, but also on our quality and safety. It comes through as part of our quality initiative. So it will come through there, hopefully in a more concise and just to be positive on what our results are.
So that's good to hear. Thank you very much, Kevin. As I say, a good paper. Thank you for that as well. Right, moving on then. Mark, digital update.
Thanks, Anita. So I've got just a short update for you today. So the programme now is in month 5, believe it or not, and we've now decided to kind of give the programme kind of an entity and a name. So we've now branded it as One EPR, which you'll notice some of our branding in the pack, very much in line with the business case, which was really around consolidating our various EPRs into a single EPR. As Adam said in his report earlier, we had our launch event last month, really successful. A lot of people attended, and to add to Adam's update is that we had the Daedalus chair and the medical director attend, and they reiterated their support to the UK market and their board strategy of bringing their flagship European product into the UK. So we're very much in a good position to work with them and on building that product into NHS standard. The programme's now in the design phase, so you probably don't see a lot happening around the trust from a kind of a day-to-day perspective. Is that this is very much about lots of people sitting in rooms in the design phase. So we've got experts from Daedalus, and in fact we've got a contingent from Germany and France in today working with our teams, clinical teams, digital teams. They're kind of in a room now looking at what that future state looks like. So we've probably got about another 5 to 6 weeks of that before they kind of emerge and start to demonstrate the product on a wider basis. The programme's on target for a full delivery in phase 1, phase 1 delivery in Q2 25-26. So we start the rollout in June, and phase 1 is inpatients, outpatients, EPMA, which is the electronic prescribing, and what we refer to as orders results management, which is the electronic ordering of diagnostic scans and blood tests, etc. So still on target as per the plan in the pack. You'll also notice in the pack that we've got a very strong governance model in place now. We have got 10 clinicians now as part of the digital team, either full or part-time, and that includes 5 consultants from the trust as well, and those consultants are leading the various work streams as well. So again, working on the triumvirate model that we have as a trust, led by a clinician and then attended by Daedalus experts around that design phase. And then obviously we've got the technical phases as well. So this is a very complex cloud delivery. We've got colleagues from BI, we've got cybersecurity people, all involved in this, and at the moment we've got a program board which is attended again by clinicians from the trust and ICB representation as well on that board, reporting up in progress into FPPC and TMG. And next month, as we committed at the open day, is that we intend to open up the solution centre. So we've got a refurbished room that was sponsored by Daedalus down in the Peabody's area. And what we intend to do there is to have open sessions for drop-ins, to have demonstrations for clinicians and people around the trust to kind of give us a view and really help with that iterative design process. Thank you. I think that's all I've got, Anita, for the formal update.
Thank you very much, Mark. Any questions or comments for Mark, please? Nope, I think everyone's very happy. Thank you, Mark. A good update, and it looks like there's progress being made. And I was particularly pleased to see the number of clinicians that you've got involved working on this. I think that's a really strong thing. So thank you very much for that. Right, moving on then. Other Kevin, ENHPS delivery plan update, please.
Thank you, Anita. There's obviously quite a comprehensive report in the papers that gives us an update on progress on the rollout of our new single method for improvement, the use of the North Arts production system, otherwise known as ENHPS. There are probably just 3 or 4 sort of salient points that I would just ask to draw out to the board's attention today. I think probably just to start for context for new members around the virtual table and for people listening in to YouTube at a later point. We adopted our new single method for improvement earlier this year. It is a lean approach to improvement. It's all about creating value from the perspective of the patient. So it's about reducing the burden of work for staff and the burden of experience for patients and families and relatives. And that's done through the identification and the elimination of waste in everyday system and process. We are working with our improvement partner, the Virginia Mason Institute, a US-based healthcare system, who first adopted lean from their learning from the Toyota production system very successfully back in the early 2000s. And they've since gone on to replicate successes with other healthcare providers and systems globally across 26 other countries, including the NHS. And they are there to support and guide us so that we can learn from their experiences and actually accelerate our own transformation journey. Adam's already kind of highlighted some of the points in the paper earlier in his report, but I think if there was a really sort of visual way to demonstrate the power of the method, it would just be taking a moment to reflect on the ophthalmology rapid process improvement workshop that we just completed at the end of last month, looking at the injection pathway for age-related macular degeneration. This is an intense 5-day event, but in the 6 weeks up to that event itself, the KPO team, the Kaizen Promotion Office and the local team undertake a lot of standard work, observing current processes, taking a lot of detailed observations and timings, a lot of interaction and feedback from staff and from patients and carers and relatives, so that going into the event itself, there's a really comprehensive understanding of what the current state looks like in terms of the process that's to be improved. As Adam's alluded to, during that week, the team identified 62 different individual ideas for improvement, a number of which were tested back on the Gemba where the work is done. There's 3 in particular that I really wanted to just focus on because for me, they're quite powerful. The first one was the work with patient involvement about how many physical steps patients that are already high risk with visual impairment that they had to undertake from entering and exiting the environment, which in the current state was 282 steps. But from a simple redesign of the flow and the layout of the physical environment, they've been able to reduce physical steps for patients down to 104. As importantly, again, by looking at the value streams so that the processes behind each physical patient's attendance in those clinics, they could identify opportunities to reduce waste. And for patients who required pressure checks, they were able to reduce individual attendance times from 46 minutes to 24 minutes for patients. And for those not requiring pressure checks, from 34 to 13 minutes. So that's really sort of powerful numbers there, but signifies a fantastically improved patient experience, but also really releases fantastic opportunity for efficiency and productivity for the service. But equally important is that on day 1 of that 5-day improvement event, the local team got an intense understanding of the method. And so they now are really well equipped to continue their improvement work as they move forward, looking at other aspects of their environment. I think a second key point just to mention then is that we've launched our Introduction to ENH training, an offer available for all staff at all levels, at all sites across the organisation. This very much focuses on the fundamental components of the method, which is around waste, value and 5S. 5S is a very common and familiar waste reduction strategy in lean. This 3-hour session provides some very simple but effective tools that staff can immediately go back to their work environment and apply quickly and to very demonstrable visual impact so that other people and other staff can quickly see the benefits of the method and hopefully then encourage them to engage at a later date. Since June, we have already provided over 45 delivery sessions that involves over 450 staff, and that work continues. I think the next point, as equally important again, is we've launched our ENHPS for Leaders programme, 3 cohorts involving 20 staff each. we've deliberately targeted our executive and senior divisional leadership teams so that we can begin to role model the method and the new leadership behaviours and styles that are warranted here. This is a much more intense programme, 5 days, 6 weeks apart, and not just getting in-depth experience of the method itself, but people are also coached through understanding complexity and managing change across teams, departments and organisations, as well as coaching in new leader styles so that we move ourselves as an organisation from leaders as fixers to leaders as problem framers, where we actually spend more time coaching and enabling teams to identify everyday problems that they have, generate their own ideas for solutions, and empowering them to actually test those ideas through PDSA so that incremental improvement becomes just part and parcel of the way we do things around here. And I think the last point there would just be to flag that we now have a fully established Kaizen promotion office. We're receiving intense training from our improvement partner so that we learn the method, and as we're learning the method, we're experimenting and promoting the method. We're delivering our education and training offers across the organisation, and we're facilitating training events and offering coaching. And this is really important because not just does this mean that the improvement method has been taught by our own ENHT staff and not VMI staff, it also means through a very rigorous certification process that well beyond the end of the partnership, well before, should I say, the end of the partnership, we will become completely self-sufficient in the ongoing capability requirements for the ongoing rollout of the method across the organisation. So in terms of next steps, we are already reflecting at Trust Guiding Team, the governance oversight meeting, our learning from the first 12 months in the delivery plan rollout, and using that learning to inform the prioritisation of what will soon become our delivery plan for 25-26. And I'll stop there and open for questions.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And just a quick point from me, I happened to be visiting ophthalmology last week, and I was very impressed with how excited they were about it, how they were actually putting stuff into action then and there. It was a very positive vibe, really. So absolutely would reinforce your comments about how they have embraced the approach and are actually putting it into action. Richard.
Thanks, Anita. Thanks, Kevin. I think it's great an improvement methodology. I think this is a well-proven methodology as well, and it's great to hear some of the first examples which really help make people enthusiastic. From my role, two really kind of important questions to ask. One is, how do we make sure these improvements that are worked out in the RIPWs are actively sustainable improvements and measurable to us? And the experience in some other trusts have learned there's a huge amount of enthusiasm and ideas on how to improve, but then it takes a long time to implement, and sometimes even don't achieve what we thought we would be achieving through those things. So that's one question. The second question is, how do we balance the short and the long term? It feels like, we've been looking for examples, and then you, of course, take the enthusiasm of teams as well. But we've got a couple of hairy topics, I would say, in the trust that deserve some priority. So how do we match the short term and the long term and make sure that we focus some of our efforts on the longer term important topics?
Thank you, Richard. Two really good questions. So I think in terms of how do we sustain, I'd answer that in a variety of ways. I think the output from the Rapid Process Improvement Workshop as one sort of example is an implementation plan, which is then reported back to the organisation in a 30, 60, 90-day process. There's also what I would call the infrastructure for improvement within each local area, which we refer to as daily management. And that's examples of production boards, ideas boards, huddles, standard work for leaders. And some of the work within the report talks about the early steps to roll that out across the organisation. That is another proven part of the method for how you put the infrastructure in place so that the improvements that are done in these and other types of events embed and sustain in the right kind of environment across the organisation. And I think the last piece for me would be the Leaders Programme, and very much the whole sort of the principle and output from the leaders program, with leaders coming back out to their teams with the new skill sets to encourage, enable and coach teams, means that you have both a ground up approach to the improvement as well as a top down approach to seek that assurance. And the positive leader rounds offer another opportunity for the senior leadership teams to reinforce the emphasis and the curiosity and sense check local health processes about how things are going within HPS and other ways. So there's a variety of ways that hopefully answer the question there for you. In terms of the short and long term, I think we appreciate that at the moment, the way that we feel that we can use the method because of the state of maturity the organisation is at, is on sort of more things that are within the gift of a local team, and it will take us some time to get the maturity to look at cross-functional or system types improvements. So we have made a deliberate decision to have a transitional model where we have some elements of work that we will bring through the ENH production system, and we will be developing a series of value streams over the course of the next few months that will reflect that work plan for the next sort of 18 months before the end of this year. But at the same time, we have a project management office approach to support teams on some of the more immediate issues that we need to do, still using the values and behaviours that are very much inherently part of ENHPS, but mean that we need to do things in a more short-term focus to ensure that we don't miss that opportunity. And that's a work in progress, and we had some of those discussions at the last FPPC that probably reflected where we are with that journey. I don't know if that answers both questions, Richard, or if there's anything you wanted to come back at, sorry.
I'll take that thumbs up as that's the end. Thank you very much, Richard and Kevin. Janet.
Thank you very much. Kind of leading on really from what you were saying, Kevin. One of the things I noted later on in the report was looking around financial targets and some of the pressures around PMO support in terms of delivering some of those efficiency programs. And I was just wondering from a strategic point of view, but it sounds like this is kind of, from what you've just said, kind of in plan anyway, to link some of those strategic priorities to targeting at a more strategic level, how you might be approaching the implementation of the production system, because I appreciate this, the kind of going where the energy is piece that's happening at kind of ground level, but then clearly there's some kind of quite key strategic priorities that potentially lend themselves to really kind of practicing some of those leadership behaviours that people are picking up.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. I thought I saw Nina's hand, but it's gone down again. Nina, did you want to come in or not?
Yeah, I was going to ask about prioritisation, but then Richard kind of got in before.
Okay, that's fine.
And then the other thing I was going to ask around the culture, because obviously it's great to take people through this leadership programme, but I just was wondering, Kevin, if there's also support for them once they get back to their team, and then their responsibility is to bring people with them, because often that cultural piece is really the bit that makes things sticky. But I think you did kind of answer that in your response to Richard.
And there'll definitely be ongoing support delivered through the Kaizen Promotion Office and the coaching offer. And we're also in the background looking at what sort of like a learning network would look like and what an ambassador program across the organisation would be, so that that ongoing learning and sharing can be kind of part of that support moving forward. And we actually had the first of those kind of events just 2 weeks ago, where we invited everyone who have already completed the Introduction to Order Leaders programme to come into exactly that platform for that purpose, so that we can all, as early adopters, learn and support one another. So that is work in progress, and I've obviously got a more detailed report coming to People and Culture Committee that allows us to go into a bit more detail about that in a couple of weeks' time.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you. Right, so that paper was for discussion, noting, so I think we've done that. Thank you. Right, I'm going to call a break at this point because I think we've been concentrating for a little while, but we are also a little bit behind the clock. Are we able to come back promptly at 11:15, which is only 6 minutes, I'm afraid, but at least we can try and claw some time back if we can. 11:15? Great. So we'll pause now and we'll rejoin at 11:15. Thank you. Right, let's see if we're all back or coming back. Oh, yep, great. Okay, I think we're all back, so welcome back. Let's then proceed with our agenda. The next item was the board assurance framework, and then we've got the first of our deep dives. So Stuart.
Thank you. So before discussing the two spotlighted BAFs, can I seek the board's agreement to reduce the system inertia risk score down to 12, and just highlighting that FPPC supports that change? Okay.
Are we comfortable with that? Thank you.
We're introducing a new approach of spotlighting two risks at each board, and the two risks this time are investment risk 1 and health inequalities risk 2. So taking those in order, so the investment risk, the good news is the estate strategy is that we approved earlier is a significant additional control. And the cover sheet sets out updates for both of these risks. So conscious of time, I will turn to both Martin and then Justin as to whether there's anything they want to add to this.
No, I wasn't intending to call out anything kind of specifically, kind of Stuart. I mean, hopefully it's a comprehensive kind of refinement of the documentation that we've kind of used kind of sort of previously. So I'm just happy to take kind of questions that people might have around the controls that are kind of listed, or indeed kind of gaps in assurance and suggested actions and mitigations.
Thank you, Martin. And Justin, did you want to say anything on the health inequalities BAF before we open it up for any questions or comments?
I was just going to say a little, if that's okay, Anita. Is that all right? Yeah. So I was going to say very briefly that obviously health inequalities matter to us as an organisation. We serve a population that's largely affluent, but actually, and only 3% of our population are in the lowest quintile from a socio-demographic perspective. But those that are in that quintile live on average 10 years less than the rest of our population, and they have 17 years of healthy life experience less than the most wealthy in our population. Much of what affects life expectancy lies outside the trust. We can influence it to some extent, but it's up to us to make the changes we can, and it's also up to us to influence others to make the changes that they can. As board are aware, because I've spoken previously, smoking is the single biggest cause of loss of healthy life years within the UK. And as a trust, we are working towards becoming a smoke-free site. And a number of you will have heard me talking about that recently. We know that adversity starts early in life, and board is also aware of the work that we're doing around community paediatric services and paediatric audiology. We've also done quite a lot of work on our patients with learning disability, and we've spoken about that recently at board. We also spoke 2 months ago about our patients with life-limiting diseases, and we know we've got more to do on the work around transition for those patients. That was all I was going to say, but I'm very happy to take any questions on the work that we've done around the health inequalities BAF. And I guess also at some point we need to have a bit of a think as a board and a senior leadership team, whether this is something that we want to put more emphasis on, and if so, how we do that.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. I'll bring Nina in.
Thanks, Chair. Justin, I think this is a really important topic. I think no surprises there. Around the smoking, I was just going to ask, are we thinking about including vaping within that? Because obviously with the new bill that's going through, it includes vaping. And I do talk about this quite a lot, having 2 teenage daughters that live in Hertfordshire. It's a massive issue in teenagers. And I was just wondering if we are thinking of expanding it to include that.
So I'll try and give you the 30-second answer rather than the half-hour answer. Vaping has been a major success in terms of stopping adult smoking. It's been a complete disaster in terms of encouraging young people to take up addictive nicotine habits. Yep. I'm really pleased that we'll be banning disposable vapes. There is a national stop to swap plan at the moment that encourages the use of vaping as a way of helping people to stop smoking. So we've got a really difficult decision to make. that decision might be subsumed into a national decision. That's not yet clear. The government has decided not to ban vaping in hospitality sites. I'm not yet clear from the plan legislation whether they plan to ban vaping within hospital sites. If they do, then actually the decision becomes very easy because we have to follow the national guidance. If they don't, then our plan was probably to go for an interim period where vaping was allowed in a single designated area on the hospital site, and then to look towards banning it completely in the future. But I guess I need a little bit more clarity on what the national position is, and then we will put forward the local policy.
Yep. Can I make a suggestion? So thank you for that, and thank you for the question. Can I make a suggestion? We are at the moment discussing the board assurance framework and the risk level. I do think what that question, and I guess Diana is also wanting to talk about health inequalities, and I certainly had some comments on it. I think what that says to me is there is a desire and an appetite for us to talk about the health inequalities area specifically, and to indeed discuss the question you posed, which was Justin, which was how are we going to get that oversight, that scrutiny and that focus? How are we going to actually practically do it? So what I would suggest is, Diana, if you have a question specifically about the BAF, so the risk element of it, I will take the question. If it's about health inequalities per se, can I suggest that we hold that thought, as it were, and can I ask Stuart if we could please schedule at a future board that we have this conversation, because I think it is an important one. I think it's one of the things that's not going away, and I think we need to be really clear about what it is we want to do, and you know, I mean, as many will know, I have a big particular bugbear about communications. I think actually with a reading age of 8 in the population, most of our patient leaflets are not fit for purpose, and that is a health inequality, because that will affect people potentially that need to know what's in there. So I think it's a wider topic. So can I please suggest we pause it? Diana, I'll come to you unless it is about the risk element that you wanted to talk.
No, I'll hold off the thought and wait. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the board assurance framework and the detail there, obviously we had the one about investment, which Martin spoke to, and we've also got the one about health inequalities, a bit more of a focus about what's going on. Stuart has already mentioned the fact that we're proposing reducing the risk for system inertia, and you've obviously got the detail there about each of the BAF risks. For those who are new to our board, I would thoroughly recommend you having a look at the detail of those risks. We will be looking at 2 each time going forward, but I think there's a bit of a tendency to just assume it's sitting there and it's somebody else is looking at it, but actually we need to look at them, we need to understand. And if we see things that we think are not reflected there or not reflected appropriately there, those are the questions we need to be asking as certainly as non-executives. So please, I would commend the paper to the House if you like, but please, yeah, please do have a look at it. Please do look at the detail. But if we don't have any specific questions on the BAF report that we have here, I'm going to suggest we move forward. Nina.
Sorry, Nina. The only one I did have about system inertia was around, you know, the pediatric ADHD and sort of that pathway. Are we now comfortable that the ICB will support us in doing something that's potentially outside of the hospital and more of a, I know that Lucy was looking at whether it would be some kind of system thing. Is that going to happen? Because I guess that was my only thing with the system inertia part originally. Does that make sense, that question?
Who would like to take that one?
Shall I respond?
Adam.
It's now my BAF risk. Yeah, I don't think system inertia is in any way leading to delays in resolving neurodiversity. I think the ICB are backing it. It's the various partners in the system have actually come up with a new model, and in many respects, it's probably evidence of the reduced risk in system inertia, because I think probably 18 months ago, we may not have been as confident that if this scenario had come up, that we would have been able to make the progress we have. So yeah, I think I wouldn't highlight that as a risk particularly.
Thank you. Great.
Okay, if there is nothing else on the BAF paper, we will note that paper. Thank you very much. We'll move on to learning from deaths. I apologise, Justin, that we are a bit behind the clock now, but so if you could take the paper as read and give us highlights, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anita. So as an organisation, my belief is that we provide a good standard of care and that we have relatively low mortality rates, which are a tribute to the quality of the clinicians we have. However, there are things that we need to learn from the data, and there is always stuff that we can do better. So if you go to page 149, you'll see our significant mortality risks. We know overall that our cardiac mortality is as expected or predicted, but that the individual categories are not as expected. And we understand why this happens in patients with multiple comorbidities, but this is difficult to explain. Not difficult to explain, but it's complex to explain. We know that we had harm from the 2017 to 2020 SACT data in ovarian cancer, and we have a robust plan which the board are aware of around this. The problems with the SJR tool have largely been resolved, and we're now moving forward and using it in the way that we did previously. But we know that there's also more that we can still do with PSERF around mortality. You'll see that our rolling SHMI and HSMR data continue to fall, although there will always be a degree of month-on-month variation. I'm really pleased there are no HSMR QSIM alerts within the report. There are eight from SHMI, where we're 3 standard deviations away from where we should be, and those are reported on page 151. All of those have to be looked at in the context of overall mortality, and they have to be understood in terms of the subclassifications. But I'm really happy to take questions on this report.
Apologies, couldn't come off mute. Any questions or comments for Justin? Teresa.
Thanks, Justin. I thought it was a really good and comprehensive report, and I'm just aware of the fact that any coroner's findings we're going to be feeding through QSC in the future, and I just wanted to highlight that wee point if that was helpful.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And I think the other thing that's really important in this report is that we've now taken over, or our medical examiners have now taken over also all of the community deaths as additional scrutiny. And you'll also see that data increasingly coming forward in this report.
Richard.
Yes, thanks, Justin. Great report and great to see some of the outcomes, which is what counts, of course. A quick question. The first risk that is highlighted, it seems to me a little bit like a data issue, but I'm not sure that I completely understand it, and I'm not sure why it's taking so long.
So cardiology is complex. So where to start from? The population that we serve is an older population than average in the UK. That means that they're more likely to have multimorbidity. We see the number of deaths overall caused by cardiac disease is very much as expected based on that population. But what we've seen over time is underrepresentation of some groups within that and overrepresentation of others. So, for example, we've seen more deaths attributed to ischemic heart disease than we would expect, but less deaths attributed to cardiac failure than we would expect. Now, in reality, the two conditions are very much intimately related, and what goes on the death certificate really depends on partly on the preference of the doctor who's writing that death certificate and the medical examiner who then scrutinises it. And it's that data that goes to coding that then informs this. So if you like, you're seeing a bucket that's being split in different ways, and it's very hard to get that right. But what that means is that you'll see a 3 standard deviation outlier report when in fact the overall pathology that somebody's died from, we're seeing an underrepresentation in another part of that particular pathology. I don't know if that makes it any clearer. If it doesn't, I'm really happy to pick it up in a one-to-one.
That's great. Thank you, Justin. David.
Thank you. I just want to add a little bit of assurance and reassurance. So, Richard, some sort of cardiovascular component or event has popped up with the trust off and on for 3, 4, 5 years. And one of the when I first met Justin, that was one of the questions I asked him was there any underlying issue here or not? What I can say is that the Quality and Safety Committee does look at this quite carefully. I take a particular interest in mortality review. I've been a member of mortality review groups elsewhere, and I sit in on our own mortality surveillance group. And what I have seen, which is more reassuring than assuring, is very careful, diligent, thorough analysis of the data by clinical experts, supported by the data team. So I do think we, genuinely trawl through this and make sure that there isn't an issue. And so far, every time this has happened, there has been no underlying problem or concern. It is a matter of sorting out the issue at the time from a data perspective more often than not. So I hope that gives you some reassurance that I have paid this attention, and I'm due to sit in again next week, I think.
Great. Thank you, David. I don't see any other comments. I did have just one question for you, Justin, if I may. I know it mentioned somewhere in the report that we are, at the moment, of the structured judgment reviews, the SJRs, we've only done 4%. We need to get up to 20 by the end of the year, or 15 to 20. And I think there's a comment about we're clearly going to have to get a welly on to get that done in the rest of the year. Are we confident that we have the resources we need in order to achieve the level of SJRs that we need to do?
So I'm relatively confident that we will. We've got a really strong mortality team. I guess what I would say is the point in the year which we normally get the majority of these done is the slightly, not allowed to use the quiet word in the hospital, but the slightly quieter bit of the year. Because of the changes with the commissioning of the product that we used to do it, quite a bit of the year was the bit of the year where we didn't have access to it. So we will do our very best to get up. We normally hit significantly above 20% as a trust in terms of the number of cases we review, and we will try and get there this year. But I guess the constraint will be that we're now doing it in the time of the year that's really the busiest clinically. So I hope we will get there, and I'm relatively assured that we will do a significant proportion. We'll review in detail a significant proportion of the deaths. I'm not sure that we'll get to the above 20% figure that we got to last year, but I hope that we will get close to that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, if there are no other comments on the learning from deaths, let's move on to the integrated performance report. I will do we'll take it in the way that we normally do. In other words, we will go to we'll deal with quality first, and I think that's normally trees around Justin. We'll go to operations, which will be Lucy. We will go to finance, which will be Martin. We'll go to people, which will be Tom. At the end of each section, I'll ask the chair of the relevant committee if they have any additional comments to make. But in view of the time, I wonder if we could just be a little brisk through this. Obviously highlighting only those things on which we need specific assurance and need to ask those questions, but perhaps any detailed conversation we need to take offline. So hand over then. Who's kicking us off on quality?
Shall I make a restart, Chair?
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. So I guess my highlights from the report is we have still got continued and sustained work to do around closing down outstanding instances, and we're reporting back through Quality and Safety Committee for that. Just on the infection control front, really good progress with MRSA, no counts year to date, which is wonderful, an uptick in C. diff, all well managed, no transactional read across to any mortality, and we are under a year to date trajectory, which is helpful. I think it's just important to draw out that we have had 4 methicillin-susceptible Staphylococcus bacteremia. You'll read that in the report. So what does that mean? This is a bacteria that lives normally on your skin and can be easily transferred through an implantable device. That could be a catheter or a vein flow or something. So all 4 patients have been fully tracked and treated with broad spectrum antibiotics and doing well. But nonetheless, 4 is 4 too many, and there's a lot of work being done around prevention of MSSA. Finally, just a bit of work on sepsis 6. You'll see that great sustained improvements in ED despite our pressures, which is to be commended, and also an improving trajectory for most parts across our wards and departments, but more to do there for sure. And finally, just a wee call out for pressure ulcers. We have really made a good sustained improvement around pressure ulcer reduction, which is really helpful to see. However, we have seen an uptick in our falls, and you will see in the pack that we did have 1 fall with severe and significant harm to a patient who is actually well, but did in fact sustain a fracture. So I guess your question to me, Chair, from the board would be, so what are you doing about this, Chief Nurse? So we have instigated a weekly Fundamentals for Nursing Care Improvement group, and the Deputy Chair of that group is Lorraine Williams, who's actually joining us today on the board, and I will chair it personally myself, and that is to focus on making sure that each and every one of those patient-sensitive quality indicators are improving across our domain. So I'll stop there and hand over to Justin, if I'm the chair.
Teresa, thank you so much. I think the only thing I was going to pick up from the report, Anita, was C. diff, which Teresa has spoken about a little bit. So what I've been doing is chairing the weekly C. diff MDTs in the trust so that we can better understand why we've seen so many cases over the last couple of years. And it's been fascinating. Most of the cases are not avoidable by the time the patient arrives in secondary care. And a lot of what we're seeing is based on the number of antibiotics being prescribed in primary care. So with that in mind, what we're trying to do now is bring primary care into our C. diff discussions, because what we're realizing is that really it's the longitudinal exposure to antibiotics that's driving this. And that's not a surprise. Again, we serve a population who, because of their age, will have a multiplicity of health problems. And therefore we see frequent exposure to multiple courses of antibiotics. We also serve a population where more than 50% of our older people are on proton pump inhibitors, which we know is an additional risk factor in this. So I really hope that by trying to draw in elements of primary care to the C. diff weekly MDT, we will start to see a little bit of progress on this. But I don't think the numbers are unexpected based on the work that we're currently doing.
Great, thank you, and that sounds like a really good approach. David, quickly, obviously your committee scrutinises these aspects of the IPR anyway. Do you have any additional comments you want to share?
I think the one area that we haven't touched upon from Teresa or Justin is just for us to note again that the number of PALS referrals remains statistically quite high, a third of which are about appointment questions. So in fact, I'm going to see PALS on Friday. So I think that remains a pressure that the board should be aware of.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. Teresa, you wanted to come in on that?
Yeah, I think thank you for raising that. You're absolutely right, David. It is a constant challenge for us. Some of this is linked to audiology, I would say as well. We've seen significant calls come through for appointments there, but also clarity on appointments, whether those are elective emergency or outpatients. And in fact, I think what we are looking to do is redeploy substantive staff into PALS to try and make sure we can clear down that backlog in a timely fashion.
That's helpful. Thank you, Teresa. Any questions on quality before we move on to the next section? I don't see any hands raised. Thank you very much. Let's move on to operations then. Lucy?
Thanks very much. I'll be brief. In cancer, as you'll have seen, we maintained our strong performance as we do. Diagnostics is a kind of tale of two different challenged specialties and non-challenged specialties, and in the non-challenged ones we're really well on track and seeing the numbers decrease each month, and good work going on supported by the PMO on efficiency in in imaging in particularly, but with audiology, for the reasons that we know, it's going to take us some time to clear that backlog, but the Super Saturdays have started in paediatric audiology, and we've made a number of appointments to important clinical audiology posts in the last 8 weeks or so. So building the foundations again. MRI, detailed work going on with demand capacity forecasting so that we can really work out what additional capacity we may need once we've cleared backlog. In RTT, we finished September bang on the target, or on the forecast that we had made of 70 patients over 65 weeks, and we've just finished October with 45, I think, patients over 65 weeks. And although we're not proud of having small numbers of patients over that target, it's good performance compared to many other trusts in the east of England, and we are managing it to a very close level on a week-by-week basis. And again, the patients who exceed that time are in a very small number of specialties, and in fact the majority of our specialties are within touching distance of or indeed already compliant with 52 weeks, and that's our focus going forward to the end of March. On UEC, this report shows at the end of September that we had another good month in September, and unfortunately, as some of you will know, in October we have not managed to maintain that performance, and both rising acuity in terms of presentations and particularly high numbers of staff suffering short-term sickness have really affected our performance in September, which has dropped to 68.5%. Although we're very early in November, we are back to 73% in the first few days of November, but it is we've gone back to daily meetings to try to manage that, and are considering what sort of additional support we put in over the winter to support the teams who are working very, very hard to deliver, but not managing to the extent that we would wish them to. And I'll stop there and take questions.
Thank you, Lucy. Richard, Chair of FPPC, do you have any comments on the operations?
Well, first of all, to apologise that we haven't included the report from our 24th of October meeting, which is of course more current than the one that was in the papers. But I think generally we're very pleased with what Lucy has said about the progress in RTT and cancer. We were concerned about the inconsistent improvement in urgent and emergency care performance, which is Lucy just highlighted, because while we're still benchmarking, okay, it's just not consistent, and we were assured by the actions that Lucy's just explained. So that's pretty much on the operational performance, Anita.
Thank you. Any questions on the operational performance? I had just one for you, if I may, Lucy. I did notice somewhere in the pack, I can't remember where, but I remember reading it, something about in terms of our percentage of patients that we're discharging in time for them to get home for lunch was at about 17% or something, and clearly we would want that to be higher. It's better for patients, it's better for us, it's better for ED, etc. What steps are we taking actively to try and help that earlier discharges issue earlier in the day? Thank you.
Yeah, number of steps. So we have an internal discharge improvement group led by the Divisional Nursing Director for Unplanned Care. And actually that is working away at a number of improvement measures. Also, we've invited the chief nurse from West Herts to come and observe our processes, more at the front door, to be honest, but what we do at the front door affects the back door as well. She's coming the end of next week because their improvement in not only in their ED performance, but in the proportion of weekend discharges and earlier discharges is something that we think we can learn from.
Okay, thank you. Richard, you wanted to come back in.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot one of the things in my notes. So we extensively discussed the MRI capacity issue that Lucy referred to, and we're assured that in the short term we use outsourcing to address the issue, and in the longer term there's going to be a longer term plan. So just to be complete.
Right, thank you very much. If there are no more comments on the operations, I'll hand over to Martin for finance.
Thanks, Anita. So as you can see in the pack, we've reached the half-year point in terms of the kind of financial year, and we're reporting a year-to-date deficit of £1.3 million, and that's about £700,000 adverse to plan, and that gap largely relates to the impact of industrial action that we saw in the earlier on this summer across June and July, and that's the impact of lost income and activity during that period. So whilst we, I guess, are reporting our year-to-date delivery relatively kind of close to plan, we know that in actual fact the underlying financial performance of the trust at the half-year point is more complex than that. We've experienced across the last 6 months some consistent hotspot pressure issues in terms of expenditure across pay, non-pay, looking particularly at kind of medical staffing, pathology as being kind of high-profile examples of that are well entrenched within our financial position. We've been able to largely manage the impact of that across the year to date through the deployment of a series of non-recurrent, unplanned kind of benefits. But what we kind of clearly recognise as a trust is that is not a sustainable financial operating model for us sort of going forward. And we need to address the underlying run rate deficit that we're running at the moment. So in response to that, the organisation has initiated both within divisions a series of mitigating action plans on that, and then at a higher level, a series of kind of broader financial recovery kind of themes that are being led by a series of executive kind of SROs. So those programs have been kind of mobilizing during the course of kind of the autumn. We've established a financial recovery group that meets on a monthly basis, which I chair, and exec and divisional colleagues kind of attend in order to regulate kind of mobilization of that activity, deployment and monitoring of kind of delivery. And that group is now also reporting into the FPPC in respect of kind of updates around the outturn forecast and kind of delivery. So on the face of it, I say, Anita, something that's tracking relatively close to plan, but actually some really significant underlying financial improvement work that's required to turn that into a sustainable delivery model for us. So I'm happy to stop at that point and take any questions, or Richard, I'm sure, will have some reflections as committee chair as well.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Yes, Richard.
Yeah, so I won't repeat what Martin has said. I would say that our focus as a committee is really on, first of all, accountability for delivering the plans in the first place. Secondly, on the extra financial recovery activities that have now been initiated and are in the process of being delivered. Thirdly, financials are a result of the things we do. They're not something that can be manipulated. So there's a couple of really key things that need to happen, which we talked about and have some due dates for, around recruiting, around job planning, which is really one of those key underpinning things that needs to happen. And then we've also requested to zoom in on a few areas, trauma and orthopedics in December as one of the bigger gap areas that we see. And finally, on the outpatients longer term plan in January. So I think these are the focus areas for the committee going forward to really address and get assurance on some of the things that Martin has explained.
That's helpful. Thanks, Richard. Any questions or comments for Martin? No? Okay, thank you very much. Then let's turn to people. Tom.
Right, yeah, no problem. I'll give a quick overview. So firstly, on mentioning recruitment there, we are currently on target for our substantive staff in post number that we planned at the start of the year. The overall vacancy rate's slightly above, and that's due to some increase in overall establishment. So we're at 9% vacancy. But when you look a little bit more within that, we do recognise we've got some hot spots. So our nursing vacancy rate particularly is a little bit higher than where we hoped it would be, with some identified kind of key areas such as ED nursing that we're having to really focus on. But our recruitment team have really kind of built up a good kind of value proposition to put out, and we're encouraging more people to come in, and we are seeing positive figures, certainly October, November. Obviously we waited for the final figures for October, particularly with our newly qualified nurses and midwives, and how we're supporting them settling into the trust. So that will start to improve by November. We have seen positive results in terms of our temporary staffing usage, particularly agency, quite a significant downturn when you look at agency as a proportion of our overall workforce, so down to 2.3% against the national ceiling target of 3%. So that at least is positive. We have more work to do around bank. We are some way off our target, but again, an improving picture just over the last month. And with the new work stream we've got as part of the Financial Recovery Board, clearly that is a focus, and with some enhanced controls and making some decisions around stopping bank for the interim. Wanted to pick up on the Grow Together, the appraisal rate, because a real positive shift up. It came a month late, really. We did have our target for the end of August, but clearly that's had more of an impact in September. We're not at the 90% target, but with that trajectory, we do expect to be there. So that is moving really well. I mentioned earlier our management competency framework. We are really pleased. We're now through the second cohort of that and receiving really positive feedback from those that are going through it. And like I say, building those capabilities in at that kind of middle management level, and particularly with our focus around the importance of things like a good Grow Together conversation, regular one-to-ones and development support is really important. Under Thrive Together, our staff surveys out at the moment. We're a little bit off our trajectory. We're at 40%, but we've still got 3 weeks left to recover it. So there's going to be a real concerted effort, I'm sure, from everyone to encourage people to complete that survey. What I will say, though, is we monitor our turnover as a real kind of indicator around staff experience, and we are really ahead of target on that. So we wanted to be at 10.5% turnover rate. We're actually at 9.5. So, and that's still an improving picture when you track that over a 2-year period. Just a final mention on Under Care Together. So the winter vaccine campaign is still running at the moment. We're currently at 26% on flu vaccine, so it's not, but we've checked across nationally. It is a national picture. The uptake on vaccines is far lower. We are doing everything we can to make it as easy to access as possible, because people aren't actively coming to us and booking in, or we certainly see that after the first month, people don't proactively book in. But when we go to visit them, we generally get a sense that people go, okay, I'll have the vaccine. So we're moving into that kind of roaming team phase and focusing on different areas around the organisation to help move that forward.
Great, thank you, Tom. Janet, as Chair of People and Culture, anything you would like to add?
Not really at this time, no. I'm just thanks to Nina for chairing the last meeting. So we're just we're going to have an interesting discussion with Kevin about the operating system at the next meeting, but that's the kind of one of the key areas of focus.
Great, thank you very much. And sorry, since Nina, you chaired the last one, did you want to add anything?
Just to say that the discussion was really good, and we did actually talk about sharing some of that experience, similar to the conversation that we had this morning with staff stories about maternity, being able to share some of the great stuff that they've done with other departments. And I think actually moving forward, there is obviously something that we need to do around job planning and how we bring that into the People and Culture Committee. But I think that's a piece of work that we'll hopefully be able to report on in the future.
Yeah,
great. And I think we're starting some of that conversation, I think, on Monday, Richard, aren't we, in terms of the sort of overlap, the kind of joint planning between the committee. So it occurred to me that'll be a really helpful opportunity to discuss that.
Yep, sounds like exactly the right thing. So thanks, both of you. Right. Any further questions or comments on the people aspect of the IPR? I don't see any hands. So my thanks go to the committees who scrutinised those aspects in greater detail, and obviously ask a lot of the questions before we get here. But thank you for all your hard work on keeping on this, and thank you, of course, to the execs and all the teams underpinning them who are putting this information together and helping us. Right, if we're okay to move on then. Amanda, maternity safety support programme. Hopefully this will be a relatively brisk but positive story. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an update to the paper that I brought to the Trust Board in September. So just in summary, you're aware that we entered the maternity safety support programme in April 2023 following our CQC visit and an inadequate rating for maternity at that time. We've been supported by maternity improvement advisors within that scheme who undertook a diagnostic piece of work and made a number of recommendations which formed a sustainability action plan, which is included as an appendix to this report. We had a visit from the maternity improvement advisors and NHS England and the ICB back in May, who noted the great amount of progress that we've made, but had a few outstanding actions that we needed to take, predominantly around our staffing model in our maternity theatres and some extra reassurance around estates and equipment. So we had a stakeholder visit in October, on the 24th of October, which went extremely well and gave us an opportunity to showcase all the great work that we've done in maternity. We were very open and transparent with all our visitors in terms of we recognise that we're still on an improvement journey. We're very proud of the progress that we've made, but we recognise there's still more that we need to do and want to do. They reviewed our sustainability action plan and made a couple of recommendations to strengthen that, which we have implemented, and that's within the action plan that's been submitted. Following that, all of the detail was in the progress report that came in September. So I'm asking for the board to sort of note that update following the October meeting and also to approve the sustainability action plan and support the recommendations within it. And then if the board are happy to do that, this will then go to various external committees, both at ICB, regional NHS England and the national team, which will signal our exit from the safety support programme, which is what was unanimously agreed at the stakeholder meeting in October. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Amanda. Any questions or comments for Amanda, please? No? Okay, this is for approval. You're looking for board approval to support those steps. Are we happy? I'm seeing some thumbs up, some nods. Yes, great. Thank you. That is approved. Thank you very much. And apologies for the fact I made you gallop through that, but
that's fine. Thank you.
As I say, I think we're pretty good and we do our homework. So we would have read the papers. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Committee. Oh no. Next thing, system report. There is a system report in there. Can I just say I found this one a bit more helpful than previous. Not only is it now the right way up, but it actually has a bit more detail in it, both of which are positive things. But does anyone, we note that paper, does anyone have any questions or comments on the system performance report? I don't see any comments on it. Adam, I'm going to just pick on you. I mean, Adam, was there anything particularly that you thought that we ought to be conscious of and keep an eye on?
No, I don't think so. I think the reality is it just gives us a little bit of context, particularly on some of the measures where we know we're not delivering constitutional standards on every measure. And I think it's just helpful for the board to say, well, if others in the system are and we're not, what's going on? Whereas really, I think it's positioned here for that purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've realised that's where I picked up that 17% before midday discharge number was from that report, I realised. And so I think, yeah, I couldn't remember where I'd seen it, but I knew I'd seen it somewhere. But no, absolutely right. But helpful that we've got that data there. And as you say, it gives us a bit of benchmarking, which is helpful. We note that then, going then to committees. Now we've heard from the main committees already, but I'll just, obviously we've got some reports in here. FPPC, I know you said, Richard, you've got the wrong report in here, but is there anything you want to add to your earlier comments?
It's not the wrong report, it's just an older report.
Okay.
No, I've made all the remarks I wanted to make, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. David, quality and safety. Anything to add? David, you're on mute if you're speaking. Nope, maybe he's dropped off. Okay. we will assume, unless he comes back in, that he has nothing to add. People and culture, I think that was it. Well, it was Janet / Nina. Anybody, anything to add on your comments earlier? Nope. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Charities. Again, David doesn't appear to be. David is still showing on my list, but no, can't see him. All right. Nina, I think you were on that meeting. Was there anything particular? Oh, is David come back? No. Nina, have you got anything that you think David might want to talk about the charity? No?
I don't think so.
Oh, David, you're back. Oh. Okay. David's back again.
Apologies. No, there's nothing to add to either the Quality and Safety Committee report or the Charity Trustee Committee report.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I wonder if I could turn to, assuming our illustrious guests from Healthwatch, Ivana and Neil, are still there. I'd wonder if I could turn to either or both of you, whether you have any questions or comments for us as a board on what you've observed and heard this morning.
Thanks so much, Anita. I'm not sure we would be referring to ourselves as illustrious, and given the meeting timing as well, I wouldn't want to hold up colleagues. Just a thanks for letting us in. It was really interesting to hear a lot about the different breadths and depths and scopes of work going on, and hopefully in the future we can bring some of our insights to your meetings to help give you a slightly different perspective of what we tend to see. But for now, I think it might be wise for us to move on, and given the time we've got available. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ivana. And I say I can't see if Neil is still on, but obviously Neil is. Oh, okay.
Page 2.
Okay. This is exactly it. I'm scrolling through madly. Neil, you didn't have anything you wanted to add?
No, thanks, Anita. I think this has been really helpful for us to get a sense of the way all the issues are filtering up through the committee structures, and we can now go away. Particularly helpful as well to see the annual cycle, and we can have a think, and I'm sure Ivana will be able to talk to board to trust contacts about when will be the best occasions for us to come and present what, so that it's kind of helpful for your decisions and reviews.
That would be really helpful, and yes, would very much appreciate your input on that, because we do want to hear from you. But if we can time it at the appropriate times that it would make most sense, that would be great. So, I mean, please have that conversation. I know I think your primary contact is Teresa, I think, but I hope by now you know Stuart, our Director of Corporate Governance, and he can help make sure that we get you in the right slots, as it were. So yeah, thank you for that. Right, so then the annual cycle is in there for noting. I haven't been notified of any other business. Is there anything anyone would want to raise as an AOB today? No, I don't see any hands, so thank you for that. So the date of our next meeting is actually in January, the 15th of January. It's face-to-face. It's at Mount Vernon Cancer Centre. So we will be meeting there. And that does slightly scarily mean that this is the last meeting before the Christmas period. And it seems somewhat bizarre on the 6th of November to be wishing people season's greetings. But on the basis that we won't be meeting together formally in board until the new year, very much want to wish all colleagues and anyone watching a very happy and relaxing festive period, regardless of what you are celebrating or celebrating at all. But I hope you will have a happy and relaxing time. I will therefore bring this board meeting to a close, and board colleagues, we've got a meeting following up at 12:30, but our public board meeting for now. Thank you very much for being with us today, our guests and anyone who's been observing. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.